the only 6 exercises you need for a wide, defined, and deep chest after 40. Before getting into the exercises, there's information that most people ignore, and that explains why so many men over 40 train chest for years without seeing significant results. The pectoralis major is not a uniform muscle. It is divided into 3 portions: the clavicular, which forms the upper and inner part, the sternal, which constitutes the central body and most of the mass, and the abdominal, the lower portion, that determines depth and volume when the muscle is relaxed. These 3 portions have completely different fiber orientations. The fibers of the clavicular portion rise toward the shoulder at an oblique angle. The sternal fibers run horizontally. The abdominal fibers descend toward the humerus. This means that no exercise, no matter how good it is, activates the entire chest with the same efficiency. You need movements that cover these 3 vectors. The 6 exercises in this routine were chosen exactly for this reason: 2 for the upper portion, 2 for the lower portion, and 2 that prioritize stretching and maximum closure of the fibers, which are the points where hypertrophy is most stimulated. Exercise number 1, incline bench press in the Smith machine. The clavicular portion of the chest is the most neglected in conventional workouts, and at the same time, the one that most defines the full look in the upper region of the chest. A study published in the Journal of Strength and Conditioning Research in 2020 compared electromyographic activation of the chest at different incline angles and concluded that the angle between 30 and 45 degrees is what maximizes recruitment of the clavicular portion without transferring the load to the anterior deltoid, which occurs when the incline exceeds 60 degrees. Above that, the exercise stops being chest and becomes essentially a shoulder press. The incline bench press in the Smith machine has a specific advantage for those over 40. It eliminates the variable of stabilizing the bar path. With free weights, much of the muscular energy is spent controlling the trajectory. In the Smith machine, this trajectory is defined, which allows you to focus entirely on chest contraction and use progressive loads with lower risk to the rotator cuff, a structure that, after 40, begins to accumulate silent microdamage. To execute correctly, position the bench with an incline between 30 and 45 degrees, and align your eyes with the bar in the starting position. The grip should be slightly wider than shoulder width, neutral wrists not bent backward. When lowering the bar, guide it toward the clavicle, not the center of the chest. This is not an error, it's anatomy. The clavicular fibers insert into the humerus with a trajectory that requires exactly this angle. Lower in a controlled manner over 2 to 3 seconds, lightly touch the upper part of the chest without bouncing, and rise by pushing up and slightly forward, as if you were pointing both elbows toward each other above the body. A tip that makes a real difference. At the top of the movement, don't lock the elbow completely. Maintain a slight flexion and internally rotate the humerus. This compresses the clavicular portion fibers even more at peak contraction. If you don't feel the upper chest working in this exercise, there are 3 probable causes. The incline is too high, the elbows are too wide open, or the descent is being done too fast, removing mechanical tension from the fibers. The most common errors are lifting the hips off the bench, which transforms the movement into an inclined, flat bench press, losing the correct angle, pushing the bar upward vertically without any intention of convergence, and using too heavy a load that forces the body to recruit deltoids and triceps to compensate. Exercise number 2, high pulley crossover. If the incline bench press is the tool to build mass in the upper portion, the high pulley crossover is the exercise that brings definition, separation, and that line that runs vertically through the middle of the chest. It mainly works the sternoclavicular portion in horizontal adduction, which is the closing of the arms in front of the body, the central functional movement of the pectoralis major. The great differential of the crossover compared to barbell or dumbbell exercises is in the tension curve. With free weights, tension decreases significantly at the peak of contraction, exactly where the muscle should be most compressed. With the pulley, tension is constant from beginning to end, and at the crossing of the wrists in front of the body, tension is still at maximum level. A study published in the European Journal of Sports Science in 2022 demonstrated that exercises with elastic and pulley resistance show significantly greater activation at peak chest contraction compared to barbell bench press, with differences of up to 18% in electromyographic activity in the final concentric phase. After 40, this property is especially relevant because the ability to recruit high-threshold motor units decreases with age, and exercises that force maximum contraction at peak help reverse part of this decline. To execute, stand between the 2 pulley supports with the cables in high position, hold the handles with arms slightly above shoulder line, take a small step forward to create initial tension, and lean the torso forward between 10 and 20 degrees. This slight anti-flexion is fundamental. It aligns the sternal fibers with the direction of movement. Pull both cables simultaneously, descending and converging toward the center of the abdomen, as if you were hugging a large tree. The elbows should remain slightly flexed throughout the entire path, not an extension, not an excessive flexion. In the final position, cross your hands slightly and contract the chest for 1 full second before returning with control. The most important tip to feel better: focus on initiating the movement with the elbow, not the wrist. Mentally, think about pushing the elbows toward each other, not pulling the handles. This activates the sternal portion much more intensely and reduces excessive involvement of the deltoid. The most frequent errors are letting the elbows bend excessively, transforming the movement into a triceps press, using too heavy a load that makes the torso oscillate, and not crossing the hands at the end, which wastes exactly the part of the movement where activation is highest. Another classic error is standing completely vertical. Without trunk inclination, the high pulley works more deltoid and less chest. Before we continue, if you're over 50, take a look at this statistic. According to the WHO, between 28 and 35% of people over 65 suffer at least one fall each year. More than 70% of these falls happen inside the home. And today, falls are the leading cause of loss of independence among older adults worldwide. Many people blame it on bad luck, but in reality, it comes down to a lack of strength, balance, mobility, and physical preparedness. That's why our team created Biological Armor, a complete protocol for people in their 50s, 60s, or 70s who want to make sure they never go through that. Inside the protocol, you'll get a special home exercise program designed to build functional strength, real balance, and reverse years of poor posture and physical neglect without damaging your joints. You'll also learn the habits scientists have identified as common among the populations with the highest life expectancy in the world, habits that less than 1% of the Western population actually practices. Access it now by clicking the pinned link in the first comment of this video, or by pointing your phone's camera at the code appearing on the screen. Exercise number 3, low pulley crossover. If the high pulley recruits the sternal and clavicular fibers in horizontal adduction, the low pulley completely changes the force vector. Now it goes from bottom to top, which recruits the clavicular portion and the inner upper part of the chest with a specificity that no other isolation exercise replicates. This exercise is technically the inverted fly and is responsible for building that arc-shaped definition that separates the upper chest from the anterior deltoid. The mechanical difference between the two crossovers is simple but essential. In the high pulley, the resistance vector descends, working against the closing of the arms from top to bottom. In the low pulley, the vector rises, working against the closing of the arms from bottom to top, which is exactly the line of action of the clavicular fibers. When the exercise's line of action is aligned with the orientation of the target muscle fibers, recruitment is maximized. This is basic biomechanics, but it's something most workouts completely ignore. To execute, position the pulleys at the lowest possible height, practically at floor level. Grab the handles crossing your arms, the left handle in the right hand, and vice versa is not necessary, just each hand on the corresponding side handle. Stand in the center, lean the torso slightly forward and initiate the movement with arms pointing downward and slightly to the sides. Guide the wrists toward the center of the chest, rising and converging, as if you were going to clap slowly in front of your face. The trajectory is diagonal, starts low and ends in front of the upper chest. Keep the elbows slightly flexed and static during the movement. A practical tip: at the peak of the movement, when the hands cross in front of the upper chest, try to internally rotate the humerus. Imagine turning the thumb downward at the peak. This internal rotation enormously intensifies the contraction of the clavicular fibers because it's exactly the combined action that this portion performs during adduction. The main errors are letting the elbows bend, generating a kind of standing bench press instead of adduction, and finishing the movement with hands below the chin without elevating to the upper chest region. Another common error is using excessive weight, which forces the trunk to oscillate and transforms the exercise into a kind of row. Exercise number 4, flat bench press with dumbbells. The flat bench press is the most classic chest exercise and even with all the variety available, continues to be one of the most efficient for stimulating the sternal portion, the largest, most voluminous, and responsible for most of the chest mass. The dumbbell version has a decisive advantage over the barbell for those over 40. It allows full range of motion, reaching a point of fiber stretching that the barbell simply doesn't achieve, since the meeting of the bar with the chest prematurely interrupts the path. This point of maximum stretching matters much more than most people imagine. A study published in the Journal of Strength and Conditioning Research in 2021 compared hypertrophy in exercises performed with full range versus partial range, and found that the full range group showed 40% more muscle growth over 10 weeks. The reason lies in the passive tension that the fibers suffer at the point of greatest stretching. It signals to the muscle that there's a need to add sarcomeres in series, which increases the length and volume of the fibers. To execute, lie on the flat bench with dumbbells positioned above the chest, elbows at approximately 60 to 75 degrees from the torso, not completely open, as this overloads the glenohumeral joint, and not too closed, as this transfers load to the triceps. Lower the dumbbells in a controlled manner, letting them descend beyond the torso line. The thumb should reach or approach the chest line, feeling the real stretching in the fibers. This descent should last 2 to 3 seconds. On the way up, imagine you're hugging something, converging the elbows slightly toward each other as you push. At the top, without locking the elbows, maintain a degree of tension and return. The tip that most differentiates advanced performers from beginners. Don't think about pushing the dumbbell up. Think about bringing the elbows together. This mental focus change activates the sternal fibers much more efficiently because adduction and flexion of the humerus, not just elbow extension, are the primary actions of the chest. The most common errors include lowering the dumbbells too fast without control, wasting the entire eccentric phase, which is responsible for much of the hypertrophic stimulus, positioning the elbows at 90 degrees from the torso, which increases shoulder torque without proportional benefit to the chest, and using dumbbells too heavy that prevent complete range of motion. Exercise number 5, parallel bar dips. Parallel bar dips is the most complete bodyweight exercise for the lower chest, the abdominal portion that gives the chest that depth and that lower cut that differentiates a developed chest from a merely voluminous chest. When leaning forward during execution, dips directs the load to the abdominal fibers of the chest in a way that no machine or pulley replicates with the same richness of muscle activation. A fact that surprises many people. An electromyographic study published in the Journal of Athletic Enhancement showed that parallel bar dips with forward trunk lean generated activation in the sternal and abdominal portion of the chest comparable to flat dumbbell bench press, but with the additional benefit of intensely involving the coracobrachialis, serratus anterior, and costal portion of the chest, muscles that are rarely recruited in conventional exercises and that are responsible for the appearance of depth when the chest is viewed from the side. To execute with focus on the chest and not the triceps, the key is in trunk inclination. When getting on the parallel bars, lean the torso forward between 20 and 30 degrees. Maintain this inclination during the entire movement. Let the elbows open slightly to the sides instead of keeping them glued to the torso. This combination of inclination and elbow opening transfers the load from triceps to chest. Descend until feeling a slight stretch in the chest. For most people, this corresponds to the point where the elbows reach shoulder height or slightly beyond. Rise by pushing, maintaining the inclination and thinking about bringing the elbows together. A specific tip for men over 40: if body weight is already challenging enough, don't add weight. But if body weight is easy for more than 12 repetitions, use a chain or weight belt. Load progression is the main hypertrophic stimulus, and dips allows this progression very naturally. The most common errors are keeping the torso completely vertical, which makes the exercise essentially triceps dips, descending too fast without eccentric control, and reaching the top by completely locking the elbows, which removes tension from the chest and places it on the joint. Exercise number 6, machine fly. The machine fly occupies a role that no other exercise in this protocol can substitute. It works the chest in its pure function of horizontal adduction, without any stabilization demand, without triceps or shoulder interference, in a range that challenges the fibers from the point of greatest stretching to maximum contraction. For men over 40, this has significant additional value. The machine eliminates the risk of joint instability that dumbbells in the fly impose, especially when connective tissues already show some wear. The machine fly is frequently underestimated as a beginner's exercise, but scientific literature tells a different story. Researchers from the University of São Paulo in 2019 evaluated muscle activation in the pec deck compared to dumbbell fly and found equivalent activation in the sternal portion, with the advantage that the machine maintains constant tension throughout the entire range, unlike dumbbells, where tension drops dramatically in the final adduction phase. This peak tension is what generates the pumping sensation that many erroneously associate with a sign of inefficiency, when in fact it's evidence of vascular occlusion and metabolic accumulation, two secondary mechanisms of hypertrophy recognized by science. To execute, adjust the bench so that the elbows are aligned with the shoulder line when positioned on the pads. If the machine has a grip handle, keep the wrists relaxed. The work should be from the elbows pressing the pads, not the hands pulling the handle. Initiate the movement from the position of greatest opening, feeling the stretch in the sternal fibers, and bring the elbows in front of the chest in a controlled manner. At the peak, when the elbows meet or almost meet, consciously contract the chest for 1 to 2 seconds before returning. The return should be slow, 2 to 3 seconds, to not waste the eccentric phase. The most important tip to better feel the fly: reduce the load and increase time under tension. Many men arrive at the machine and put too much weight, which makes the torso oscillate and the shoulders take over the movement. With moderate load and slow return, the stimulus on the chest is dramatically superior. The most common errors are letting the shoulders rise toward the ears during the movement, a sign that the trapezius is compensating, not reaching the point of maximum stretching at the beginning because the load is too heavy, and executing the movement explosively without any control in the eccentric phase. Now that you know the 6 movements, organizing them throughout the week is what will determine if they will produce results or just fatigue. There are 2 models that work especially well after 40, when muscle recovery takes more time and training frequency needs to be planned more carefully. The first model is the 3-and-3 split, which works when you train chest twice per week. On the first day, you perform incline bench press in the Smith machine, high pulley crossover, and parallel bar dips. This combination covers the upper portion with heavy multi-joint exercise, adds isolation with constant tension for definition, and closes with an exercise that recruits the lower fibers with the benefit of body weight. On the second day of the week, with at least 72 hours interval, you perform flat dumbbell bench press, low pulley crossover, and machine fly. This combination delivers maximum range in the multi-joint exercise, isolation with lower vector for the clavicular portion, and finishes with the isolation of greatest tension at peak. This split distributes stimuli in a balanced way and allows each portion of the chest to be trained with 2 movements in each session. The second model is the 4-and-2 split, which makes more sense when you can only train chest once per week or when recovery is slower. In this case, the single chest day begins with the 4 structural exercises: incline bench press in the Smith machine, flat dumbbell bench press, parallel bar dips, and machine fly. These 4 cover the 3 portions with progressive overload. The other 2, the high and low pulley crossovers, are left for another day of the week, ideally coupled to a shoulder or back workout as finishers. Used in supersets with higher volumes and moderate weights to increase protein synthesis and weekly volume, without adding an entire session dedicated to chest. Regardless of the chosen model, one point is non-negotiable after 40: joint warm-up. Before any heavy multi-joint exercise, dedicate 5 to 7 minutes to circular shoulder movements, external rotations with light elastic band, and a warm-up set with only 40% of working load. Connective tissue, tendons, and joint capsules take longer to adapt and have lower regenerative capacity than muscle.